Welcome to Delegation Strategies. Delegation is a fundamental skill needed in today's busy workplace. The reason most people don't delegate is that they think it's faster to do the job themselves. However, the more you delegate, the more time you have in the future. During this program, you'll learn what delegation is and the key concepts of delegation. You'll also learn the steps to effective delegation. In addition, you'll learn to recognize why delegation can sometimes fail.
Delegation is an important part of getting things done effectively. But in order to delegate, you first need to know what delegation means. Delegation is sharing the workload by assigning projects that encourages an employee's freedom and creativity, yet maintaining a scope of authority with clearly defined limits.
I'll tell you what delegation isn't. It's not passing the buck or giving up control.
It's not refusing to make a decision by assigning it to another. Shirking from personal responsibility, handing unpleasant tasks on to somebody else.
If you think it's going to be simple, quick, and easy, you're in for an unpleasant surprise.
I think one of the things I struggle with when it comes to delegating is just simply handing off the project. In my mind, I can do it faster. What's the purpose of giving it to somebody else?
I think I have a hard time with being a perfectionist. It's like the old adage, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. But I'm finding that only goes so far.
Delegating a job is not the same as assigning a task. When you assign a task, you are focusing on the process and on the details of how it gets done. You're not giving the person any authority to make decisions or the freedom to choose a process or strategy for getting it done. In true delegation, you're not concerned with the process to achieve the final outcome. Instead, you're more concerned about allowing the employee to make their own decisions associated with solving the problem. By giving employees control over the process, they will undoubtedly proceed differently than the way you might have approached it. As long as the final outcome meets your objectives and guidelines, the project should be judged acceptable. How can you tell if you delegate enough? Here are 6 questions you can ask yourself to find out if you do.
The first question I would ask myself is, when I come back from a trip or a vacation, is my in-basket too full?
What comes to mind is, when I'm away from the office, is my trip shadowed by worry? Do I wonder what's going wrong when I'm not there?
Am I still handling the same activities and problems that I did before my last promotion?
Am I constantly interrupted with questions and requests for guidance from my staff?
Am I continually finding it harder to stay on top of my work because I'm involved in too much routine detail?
And finally, am I overworked?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you may not be delegating enough. Not sure what to delegate? Here are a few ideas. Responsibilities that are recurring. Minor decisions. Time-consuming details. Anything that others are better qualified to do rather than you. And challenges that will interrupt the routine of those who have boring jobs.
Listen, if you delegate a lot, your job is to support, guide, and control the efforts of others.
Try spending more time learning about your staff. Make sure they are learning new skills so you can continue to delegate more responsibilities.
You see, if delegating goes well, you get to do more planning, marketing, product design, or things you should be spending your time on. You may even be able to take on special projects with less hysteria and more confidence.
There are many reasons why delegation fails. Some include the following: confusion between when to delegate and when to do a task assignment. Not delegating appropriate authority along with the task. The staff member did not fully understand what was required. Performance expectations were unrealistic. Performance was not monitored along the way, and an overreaction to errors.
So how did it go with giving Mike that new project?
Not very well.
What happened?
Well, I don't think I clearly communicated what I needed, and it drastically affected the end result.
Did you get it done on time?
Yeah, we did, but it was poorly done. And on top of that, I overreacted and I blew up. It was bad.
Well, at least you're trying. Next time, make sure Mike knows what's required. And keep your expectations realistic. See how that works.
There are 3 major barriers you encounter when trying to delegate. The first barrier is the idea that you can do it faster.
At first, you may think you can complete a task faster than the time it would take to explain how to do it. But by taking the time initially to train and coach about the goals and the overall process, you will ultimately save time. When responsibilities arise that are faster for you to complete than explain, consider the following. This may be an opportunity to observe the decisions your employee makes, which could ultimately be more important than the task itself. Also consider the cost. If it will take you twice as long to explain it than to do it, but you make 4 times the amount, is it still worth the cost? What do you cost? What is your time worth?
Second barrier, perfection.
The question is not whether the employee can perform as well as you can, or whether the person can create the perfect solution you envision. The question is, do you have anyone on your staff who can perform this task to an acceptable level? If at first it may feel like you're giving up control over the details, you are. But ultimately, the responsibility and overall control is still yours.
The third major barrier is the need for control.
This is not an all-or-nothing process. You must provide the boundaries beyond which the person cannot go without your approval. Set parameters and establish guidelines. These are your management controls.
Once you've made the decision to delegate, use the following 6 steps to delegate effectively.
Define and state a clear objective and clarify your goals.
Determine guidelines for the project. Set any limitations or constraints.
Select an employee with the skills or a person who wants to develop these new skills. Grant him or her the authority to carry out the assignment. Now, this is not always your star performer. The assignment can be a learning opportunity for someone else.
Give clear instructions and request feedback to ensure understanding. Explain why they are getting the assignment or responsibility and how it fits in with the organization's overall plans. Also, discuss how it fits in with their career or development goals. Make no assumptions. Encourage questions. Tell the employee the available resources with all the facts and figures necessary for him or her to consider, budget constraints, and viable alternatives. Determine what support you will give. Define performance objectives, standards, and what results you are looking for.
Set a deadline for its completion and decide the best way for the employee to provide you with regular progress reports. For example, set up regular check-in dates.
The purpose of conducting these progress reports is to monitor results and correct mistakes. In other words, inspect what you expect.
How often and in what form will you follow up? Make sure you provide feedback, positive and negative, throughout the process, not only at the end.
Inform other employees if necessary. This will build up the team and help morale.
Also try something I like to call deputize. Now, to deputize someone means you give them a certain amount of authority. Oh, and make sure you define the scope of their responsibility, accountability, and authority.
Then let it go and don't hover.
So we want to make you the contact person for this account. How's that sound?
That sounds great. What do I do?
Well, you'll be responsible for keeping the rapport with the client. Answer all their questions, and if you don't know the answer, you want to find it.
You'll also be responsible to give updates and progress reports in the weekly staff meeting. While functioning as liaison, you will be the primary contact with this company.
Right. We want you to be the point person for them. So, answer all their questions, send them marketing materials. Whatever they request, you have the full authority to provide it.
I think I can handle that.
Anna, would you make sure the rest of the department is aware of this change?
Sure.
When assigning the project, be sure the person fully understands your requirements. Encourage questions and be prepared to make yourself available to answer them as they arise.
Give the employee the responsibility and accountability to complete the assignment. Of course, the ultimate responsibility still remains with you.
Grant in very clear terms the authority to make necessary decisions and to take action to complete the assignment. Now, this is particularly important if your employee is working with others and will need to gather information, resources, or materials.
The final component, and for many the most difficult aspect of delegation, is personal self-restraint. A person should try to step back and allow the employee freedom.
By following the 6 delegation steps, you're on the way to effective delegation. Keep the following in mind while you delegate.
Encourage risk-taking and decision-making in your staff.
Delegation takes time. Sit down and give yourself enough time to thoroughly cover the information with your employee.
Give the employee positive feedback along the way. Just don't hover. Let your employee make his or her own decisions.
Be available to help when needed. There isn't just one right way. Be sure to monitor progress. This avoids last-minute unpleasant surprises.
Focus on the goal of delegation, which is to build motivation, encourage competence, foster independence, and train others. By doing this, you'll not only improve the performance of your team, you'll be able to take on projects that will show your abilities as well.
As you've seen, effective delegation requires you to focus on the final outcome of the responsibilities you want your employee to complete. You need to give your employee the authority to do the job. Even though you're giving the employee control over the process, you still need to set guidelines to help them be successful. For additional resources on delegation strategies, be sure to access reference materials. In addition, we welcome your feedback and suggestions about this program. Please help us by completing the program evaluation.